And next, a session produced by our underwriter. Please welcome Jim McCarthy, the Executive Vice President of Innovation and Strategic Partnerships at Visa. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you all very much. I promise I won't make this too painful for you all. We'll get back on the main reason you were here. I want to talk a little bit about how Visa views the Internet of Things. I think most of you all probably have some type of card. I mean, in a city like Washington, D.C., and certainly developed markets around the world, you know, these pieces of plastic have revolutionized, I think, most of our lives. I just made a trip around the world literally last week: Hong Kong, Singapore, London, Charlotte, North Carolina, back to San Francisco. And I had this device, I had one other card, and I had my passport, and I was able to travel without having to think about getting cash before I left. But the fact of the matter is, you know, even though this device is now 60 years old, and we think about it as, again, pretty magical, certainly in developed markets, the fact of the matter is that this is a device that's actually pretty constraining, because for the majority of the time that Visa has been around, the only place this worked is where you see lights on this map, right? So when you think about the typical card, whether it's a swipe, a tip, a dip, or a tap, it required wireline telephony and good electricity. And so, you know, you can see here there's a lot more dark on that map than there is light, and certainly there are people living in those cities, doing commerce in those cities, but disconnected from the world as we know it. And then something called the Internet happened, right? And so the Internet started to connect the globe, it flattened the world, and the network fundamentally changed the way commerce has occurred. And so as we sit here today, you know, not only do I have this device here on my card, but that same device is, you know, here on my phone in the case of, oops, where is it, right here? Apple Pay, right? So there it is. And to what the congressman was just saying, not only is it the same card that the bank issued me, but actually it's a different card number that's bound to this device. So we do plan, and we do think ahead with respect to, you know, that bad people will take these devices. And so if someone actually took this off my phone and tried to replay it, we know it has to come off this phone, and we kill the transaction before it ever occurred. So obviously mobile phones have started to change the landscape. But then even here, this is the new Fitbit Ionic. Oops. Press that. And there's the same B of A debit card, except it's got a different card number associated with it. And again, it's tied to this device. And so the Internet of Things is happening around us. And again, so you've got Apple Pay, you've got Android Pay, you've got Samsung Pay, you've got mobile devices, you've got QR codes coming out of China, completely changing the way commerce is occurring around the world. And we're just scratching the surface. So when we think about, you know, how the world is going to change, you know, number one, mobile and e-commerce are commodities. Amazon's the world's largest retailer. Square is now a top 5 merchant in the United States, connecting consumers and merchants and allowing commerce to occur. So much so that last year was a historic year in the payment space, whereby payment was done more in electronic means, including ACH than previously, and cash and check are now actually smaller, a minority share. And so the world has moved to digital first. We need to think like digital first. We need to think about software and the pace of change, because it's only going to accelerate. And nowhere do you see this more prevalently than in like the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas every year. So last year we saw LED screens that hang on the wall by magnets, which, by the way, are now powering the new Apple devices and the Samsung devices. We see robotics. We had, I think there were 14 auto manufacturers at the show last year on connected cars. And again, you heard the representative talk about connected cars and driverless cars. And so the world is being plumbed for this Internet of Things concept. It's here, it's real, it's not something that's coming. And so when we think about this, the one thing all these devices have in common is that, as I said, not only are they electronic, but they're connected, right, and they're talking. And the way commerce is going to occur in the future is going to evolve in very significant ways. We're already seeing it with biometrics. You know, we all have Alexa or Bixby or OK Google in your house. You can talk to devices. You're going to see more and more of the devices talking to themselves. You'll see machine learning come into the mix, right? So your behaviors with your permissions will allow commerce to occur based on how you previously have purchased. And so again, driving more convenient ways that devices themselves will be able to automate the way we live. And again, payments and commerce is going to be at the middle of that. And so for Visa, the real big change is when we think about, you know, IoT and unbound commerce. It's the fact that these connected devices now allow us to get access to the part of the world that used to be dark, right? Places where commerce couldn't occur electronically, places where consumers were cut off from the financial mainstream. And so from an access perspective and helping the underserved and the unbanked come into the financial mainstream, the IoT environment is going to completely change the way commerce occurs, and will actually be able to help people live their lives more effectively. And just to dimension it further for everybody, there's still $17 trillion of cash and check spend in the world that we think we can get at and help these people come into the financial mainstream and really impact people's lives, not only in developed markets, but in emerging markets as well. So thank you. Please enjoy the conference, and I want to thank, again, the folks at The Atlantic for putting this together. Thank you.